gentlemen.
You're locked into JJ and Alex. With the insight and analysis on the teams you can't live without. Presented by G2G Bars. This is 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
All right, everybody, welcome back. It is a Tuesday edition of JJ and Alex 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Thanks for being with us on the program. Last hour, we brought you some fresh, updated sound up at the University of Utah from their camp, from BYU as well. And updates to the quarterback situation at BYU. The update is no update. Just letting you know. The update is no update. Gary Bohannon and Jake Retzlaff still battling that thing out. And you were also told to be patient, BYU fans. So good luck with that. It's always hard during camp to try to figure those things out. But look, if it makes you feel any better, they're also trying to figure out who their starting running back is going to be on day one at the University of Utah. So they have their issues too. Yeah, right. Joining us on the program right now, he is one of the gurus of college football, knows everything top to bottom in the game. So we're going to ask him top to bottom of all of it. Stewart Mandel, editor-in-chief of the Athletics college football coverage. Thanks for being on with us, Stewart. We appreciate it, man.
How are you guys?
We're fantastic.
We're great, Stuart. Thanks for joining us. And before we dig into a lot of this stuff, I wanted to start with your latest offering on The Athletic. You had a lot of fun. Your fake news conference with all the football teams and fans in college football. I encourage everybody to go out there and read it. It's called The Confused College Football Fan's Guide to the Many Changes for the 2024 Season. You did a great job of showing just how absurd and crazy everything has been lately. It's insane what has happened to college football. Share why what inspired you to write this and just how crazy the landscape is right now and is going to be moving forward.
I had some fun with that one. It was basically my editor said, "Hey, can you write an idiot's guide to all the changes to the sport for 2024?" And it's never. I don't know that a major sport has ever undergone this much change from one season to the next in terms of tripling the number of teams in the playoff, moving all the schools around to conferences where some of them don't make any geographic sense. The greatest coach in the history of the sport retired, and so on and so forth. Putting it all in one place, though, was – I mean, we've lived through, if you cover the sport, if you follow the sport, nothing – and this should be new to you, but putting it all in one place and highlighting some of those absurdities was, a pretty eye-opening for me just in writing it, much less the readers.
What's interesting is I think about, the day that all that news dropped with USC and UCLA, and we went on the air that afternoon, and it was, I think, June 30th of 22. It was this weird, college football D-Day of crazy. I can't even imagine. We couldn't even wrap our head around what we were being told. And then now there's the part where, they actually have to start doing it starting in the next couple of weeks, and they're actually going to be in their new conferences. I know that these teams are making money, and that's the big part of it, right? It's like, hey, we want to align ourselves with these conferences. We want to make a ton of money doing it and get that share of the TV dollars that are going to there. But does college football actually get better with those teams being aligned in these conferences like they've had?
I guess that just depends on how somebody, would measure better, and I think that's different for everybody. I think in terms of a TV product, I think Fox and ESPN are getting exactly what they want. There's going to be, you look at the schedule throughout this season, and especially early in the season, and you're like, wow, there's all these games. Texas is playing at Michigan. That's not even a conference game, obviously. Georgia's playing at Texas. USC going to the Big House. Like, these are games that, you would have dreamed of playing in non-conference games, and now they're going to be conference games. They're going to happen pretty regularly. So I think from a TV viewing standpoint, it's great. I don't think it's great from a fan experience, though. Like, there's no positive that comes from Stanford and Cal playing in the ACC. Mm-hmm. I joke that the four schools going to the Big 12 may be the first time where schools were kind of like kick, dragging, and screaming into their new conference. Usually this is so exciting. We can't wait to be in the Big 12. And, you guys lived through it. And how badly, in particular, Arizona State and Utah wanted to make the Pac-12 work. Like, it's not – and then certainly what happened to Washington State and Oregon State is a nightmare. So I think that, it's kind of continues the trend throughout the last 20, 30 years of realignment where it's all driven by TV money. The TV product usually does get better, but we keep just chipping away at the things that really, are important to a fan of a specific team.
Now as we move into this new season with all this newness and craziness, the AP Top 25 poll released yesterday, which is always interesting. What did you think of that? What teams do you think are overranked? Which teams are underranked in the first AP Top 25?
First of all, I was pretty puzzled how it comes out almost exactly the same as the coaches poll, unless the AP voters were literally copying and pasting the coaches poll. It's just, how is USC exactly 23rd in both of them, right? It's pretty random. I'm a little puzzled why voters remain so high on Penn State year after year. It just seems like a bit of insanity. I know they won 10 games last year, but it was a very empty calorie 10 wins, and that's pretty much been the case for them recently. But I'm not, sitting here and saying, well, these 5 teams should have been absolutely ranked higher than them. Clemson needs to prove – they were actually higher in the coaches poll. I think they need to prove that they can still do this, still be a nationally, relevant program without using the transfer portal. And again, another year goes by where they didn't use it at all. You could make a case that Alabama and Texas are a little too high, but you could make a case that Oregon's a little too high. But I don't know who you would replace them with. I just think this is a season where there are a clear top 2, Georgia and Ohio State, and you can put them in whatever order you want, and then there's a drop-off. And so anybody that steps into that number, whoever they'd put number 3, in this case it's Oregon, I would have said, ooh, are we getting a little bit ahead of ourselves? But somebody's got to have that ranking.
As we look at this, too, as we see kind of who these teams are that are, we have the same questions every year. I'm always like, how is Notre Dame there again? How is USC finding themselves in there? How is I'm always flabbergasted with Texas A&M and just the ability to find themselves in these polls. But who are the teams outside of the rankings? Because there's always somebody every year that outdoes whatever their expectations are. Is there somebody not in the top 25 that you look at and you go, yeah, they could be maybe a top 15 team by the end of it?
I definitely think that of Virginia Tech. I know they just missed the votes. I'm not completely finding under the radar team.
I think they were 27th or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, they've been off the radar for about 5 years, ever since Frank Beamer, really. Mm-hmm. But they very quietly last year they changed the quarterback to this really great dual threat guy, Kyron Drones. Good running game. Quietly got a lot better on defense, and so people might not notice them because they were only 7-6, but I could see them making a big jump. I could see them being in contention in that conference. Iowa State is, always one of those teams that kind of sneaks around. And if anything, some people say, Matt Campbell was the hot coach a few years ago. Hey, what have they really done since then? He's all about, that's a program that they can't just reload. It takes 2-3 years to develop a core of players. And I think they're right there now. They're one of about 6-7 teams, I think, that you could see winning the Big 12 and you could see finishing 7th. So, and I put West Virginia a little bit in that same category as well. And Wisconsin, they had a rough first year under Luke Fickell. I don't think Luke Fickell's forgotten how to coach. Tyler Van Dyke should be an upgraded quarterback for them. So a lot of possibilities there.
The Big 12, a new Big 12. Its parity seems to be the theme there. Do you believe that's the case, or do you believe there's a team in there that could really emerge as the best team? Obviously, with Texas and Oklahoma out of there, there's a void to be filled. Who fills that void?
Well, I don't buy the idea espoused by my colleague Bruce Feldman that everybody's going to go 9-3. At least 1 or 2 teams will emerge, but I don't think anybody could sit here today and say it's definitely this team. Utah is certainly the favorite, and understandably so. And maybe they rise up and they go 11-1, and everybody's talking about them. But I could see Kansas State doing that. I could see Oklahoma State doing that. I could even see Kansas possibly doing that. So that's what makes this league fascinating. It's more exciting to me that way than in the Big Ten, where it's like, okay, if Ohio State doesn't win it, something shocking happened. Where you've got a bunch of teams that could emerge And, of course, we know that whoever does win that championship is going to the playoff.
Stewart Mandel joining us from The Athletic, covers, of course, college football, and the question about, some of these teams that we cover, specifically Utah and BYU. They're in the conference. They're in a conference for the first time in a long time together, and I know a lot of people feel like, oh, that feels good. It feels like home. Not a lot. Sometimes there are Utah fans and BYU fans that are also like, nah, I don't share that same – that kind of Texas A&M Texas vibe, I guess, too, whereas it's like, nah, we want it to be a rivalry. No, you don't want it to be a rivalry. It's a weird relationship. But those two teams being back in the conference together, what does that do for the Big 12?
The first time I realized how that kind of mentality of that rivalry, and this was many years ago now, but there was that year where they played in the Las Vegas Bowl, and they hadn't played during the season. And I got the scoop on that, and I was very excited to tweet out, hey, BYU and Utah fans, guess what? You're going to be able to play each other in a bowl game. And the hate, the backlash was unbelievable. And I was like, okay, yeah, this is a good rivalry. But, look, it's a rivalry. They hate each other. It's not right that there should never be a season where they don't play each other.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we have this in place now. And I think it's good because it might be the most established rivalry in the whole conference. I noticed that it was really noticeable when they announced the scheduling format. And there were, like, I think 5 or 6 protected games, and that's it. And even some of those, you were like, really? That's considered a rivalry? But this is a good one. So I think it really injects some excitement into the new conference.
What are your thoughts on Utah? You mentioned them as being the favorite. Has that changed any? How strongly do you feel about what they're bringing back and what they can do?
I think they're kind of, for me, after I actually sat down and really looked at the schedules and everything, they were, I think, the 1A to Kansas State 1B. But there's a lot of upside there. And obviously, it starts with Cam Rising coming back. It's not every day a team gets back a guy who led them to 2 Rose Bowls after missing the entire season before. Should be another great Kyle Whittingham defense. A lot of veteran leadership on that team. I think for Utah, it's really about, starting strong. They've had those teams recently, both of the Rose Bowl teams really, where they kind of fell off the map nationally, then turned around, got healthy, won the Pac-12, but were never really a national factor. If they can be clicking right from the jump this season, they could really, have the kind of impact nationally that they didn't necessarily have those seasons.
How about BYU? This is a team that has a very complicated quarterback room, which is not fun for any coach to have to deal with in camp. Coach Kalani Sitake trying to figure out what they're going to do with either Gary Bohannon or Jake Retzlaff to get the start. But overall, BYU goes 2-7 in that first year in the Big 12, and it's a team that's not used to going 2-7 in any conference they've ever been in. But that's the difference of graduating up to a power conference. Where do you think BYU is right now as a team versus where they could be in the next couple of years?
Yeah, last year was about what I expected. It's very similar to when Utah moved up from the Mountain West to the Pac-12. Even if you've got those top-line guys, and they do have several of them, you just don't walk right in there from day one and have the top-to-bottom talent and depth that a Power 4 team has. So I think we'll find out this season how much have they been able to upgrade, either through recruiting or through the portal, to be more competitive week in, week out in the conference. I think they should certainly be better than 5-7, but there may be a ceiling to that unless they have really made a huge jump in terms of the personnel that they've added.
Do you have a way too early Heisman list?
Well, it'd be pretty unoriginal. It'd be pretty similar to everybody else's.
Well, JJ's a Heisman voter, so he cheats off of all the other folks who can give him some insight here this time of year.
Yeah,
especially.
I'm selfishly asking because I'm prepping myself.
Well, we actually have a story you'll really want to read on Friday. We do this every year. 8 writers do a fantasy draft of Heisman candidates, and you wait and see who did the best. And last year that was me. Looking back, I don't know how Bo Nix slipped to the second round, so I had Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix. I'll probably do the opposite this year. So it's really not just about who you get. I got Jalen Milroe with my first pick, and I'm feeling pretty good about that. But then it was about, okay, who can you get further down the list? Who not only will just win it, but we give ourselves points if you finish in the top 5 or you finish in the top 10. I had my eye on Tez Johnson at Oregon for one of those later round picks. Kind of overshadowed by Troy Franklin last year. He'll be the number one guy. He might return some kicks a little bit and become, kind of the all-purpose guy the Heisman voters like. I think one of the Ohio State running backs between TreVeyon Henderson and Quinshad Judkins could wind up in New York because I think Chip Kelly's going to run the ball over and over and over again with those guys. I just know which one of the two will emerge. And then, of listenership interest, I did put Cam Rising as my sleeper Heisman candidate because I think he's off the map after missing all of last season. If Utah does have the kind of season we just talked about, wins the Big 12, goes to the playoff, obviously it'll mean he had a big season. And I think in this new format, the Heisman will probably go to somebody from a team that made the 12-team playoff.
Stewart Mandel, The Athletic, is where you can find his byline. And, of course, we appreciate any kind of these insights as we get closer to college football season. This is going to be one of the more interesting ones that any of us have ever lived through. So we're excited about it, and we'll be following you, man. Thanks for hanging out with us.
All right. Thanks for having me.
There you go. Stewart Mandel. I think we hit all of it, didn't we?
We did quite a bit, yeah.
My heavens. Sure. I refuse to believe that here's the thing. I want to believe that the Big Ten is going to be just like, oh, man, must-watch TV.
It's not.
And I think it's going to be some teams that you're used to being really good are going to be really bad for a minute. And I'm okay with that. USC, I want USC to have a losing season the next two. Just to kind of kick them in the teeth and go, it's not always just about you, USC. And by the way, Lincoln Riley's not a very good coach. I mean, no. I'm standing by that for sure.
He's an awesome coordinator and quarterback coach, not a great head coach. I think that's being shown. As far as the Big Ten goes, because I've witnessed this because we have a Big Ten game of the week on KSL on Saturdays, which is rarely the game of the week because that's typically what Fox gets.
Your Boilermakers and the Indiana Hoosiers.
Which is the problem. So now it's helping that they're adding the Western inventory, which is, I think, why they really wanted to do that, because you're adding that dynamic with USC, UCLA, Washington, Oregon. Kind of gives the conference some offensive juice. But outside of Ohio State and Michigan, maybe even Penn State, what's the draw in that conference? Who are the teams and schools and players that you're like, I want to watch on a Saturday?
Yeah.
It's not there. And I can tell, but we have these games on KSL every Saturday night, and they're snooze fests. They're not great games. They're not great matchups.
What? The Minnesota Golden Gopher? Come on.
Purdue and Rutgers. No thanks. Like 80% of the games in that conference are garbage, and 70% of the games aren't even competitive.
The Paul Bunyan axe has an axe to grind about that comment you just made.
Okay, which rivalry is that?
Oh, I'm pretty sure it's Wisconsin and Minnesota, right?
I have no idea. I can't even correct you because I don't even know.
Where's
Do you
Paul
want to
Bunyan?
watch Indiana and Minnesota on a Saturday night?
Is it Wisconsin, Minnesota? See, I'm like a freaking genius.
I know there's an Oaken bucket. There's lots of buckets and hatchets.
There's a couple barrels.
And hickory and sticks and all kinds of stuff in the Big Ten. But none of it is interesting. None of it is entertaining outside of Ohio State, Michigan, occasionally Penn State, right? And so there's this big, huge competitive imbalance in that conference. It's the opposite of the Big 12. You're going to tune into the Big 12 week in and week out.
Right.
It's going to be like Pac-12 after dark.
Hey, that was fun, though.
That's my point. The Big Ten can't deliver that and will not deliver that.
Oregon State versus UCLA at an 11 o'clock kickoff. The thing I always appreciated about it was I was like, oh, man, I've spent all Saturday covering college football. I got to turn on some college football.
I can't wait to get home to watch some more college football.
And my wife is like, you are sick, man.
Yep.
I don't know what to tell you. If there was a game on at 2 in the morning, I probably would have stayed up for that too.
You would have.
I'm sorry. It's what I was born with.
Sorry, not sorry.
Look, some people have – that's not a very expensive hobby, by the way. All right? Especially considering if you get it on the old Dish Network, you get your Dish Pros going on. That's dirt cheap right now, all right? Stay with us, 97.5 EKSL Sports Zone.